We see them as titans of steel, modern marvels of engineering designed to conquer the seas. We imagine them gliding effortlessly over calm blue waters, symbols of human ingenuity and control. But for all our technology, there is one force that can never be truly tamed: the raw, unpredictable power of the ocean. When a storm hits in the middle of the vast open sea, even the largest ship is at the mercy of waves the size of buildings. And the immense forces of nature can turn this perfectly ordered system into chaos. And in that chaos, sometimes things go wrong.
The ship pitches and rolls violently. Tons of water crash over the deck. The immense strain on the steel lashing rods and twist locks that hold the container stacks together becomes unbearable. With a deafening groan of tortured metal, a lock fails. A single 30-ton box, once part of a solid wall of steel, breaks free. For a moment, it slides across the wet deck, and then, with the next roll of the ship, it tips over the edge and disappears into the churning gray water below.
So, what happens the moment it hits the water? You might think a multi-ton steel box would sink like a stone, and sometimes it does, especially if it's packed with heavy machinery or steel. But surprisingly, many of them float, at least for a while. A standard container, even when full, still contains a significant amount of trapped air. If the doors and seals remain intact after the impact, this trapped air can act like a giant life preserver, giving the box enough buoyancy to stay on the surface. Of course, it all comes down to the cargo. A container filled with running shoes or plastic toys has a much better chance of floating than one loaded with engine blocks. But this floating state is often temporary. The violent fall can warp the frame or damage the seals. Even a small leak becomes a death sentence, as water slowly seeps in, replacing the air. And what once a floating box begins its long, final descent to the seabed.
But a container that doesn't sink immediately creates a far more sinister problem. It becomes a ghost container. Often, they float just below the surface, with only a corner or an edge visible, making them nearly impossible to spot by eye or even by a ship's radar. For other vessels, especially smaller ones like fishing boats or yachts, encountering one of these is like hitting a steel iceberg. The danger is so significant that maritime agencies issue navigation warnings when lost containers are reported in major shipping lanes. But the ocean is vast, and currents can carry these hazards hundreds of miles away from their last known position. They become silent, drifting menaces, a modern mariner's nightmare lurking in the waves.
When a container holding potentially millions of dollars worth of goods vanishes into the sea, it triggers a complex financial chain reaction. The immediate answer is insurance. Sophisticated cargo insurance policies are a fundamental part of international trade, designed to cover precisely these kinds of losses. But the situation is more complicated than a simple claim. The shipping line itself has limited liability for the cargo, a principle rooted in centuries of maritime law. In some extreme cases, where cargo might even be intentionally jettisoned to save the ship, an ancient principle called general average comes into play. This means all parties in the voyage, the ship owner and all the other cargo owners, share the cost of the sacrifice. It's a fascinating concept, the idea that everyone's venture is tied together for the salvation of the whole. So, how often does this actually happen? Is it a freak accident? The numbers are surprising. Every year, over 225 million containers are transported by sea. Given this immense volume, the system is remarkably safe. However, according to the World Shipping Council, on average, over 1,600 containers are lost at sea every single year. This number can fluctuate wildly. In years with major incidents, like a catastrophic stack collapse, that number can spike into many thousands. While it's a tiny fraction of the total, it still means that on any given day, somewhere out on the world's oceans, a handful of these steel boxes are taking their final plunge.
Whether it sinks immediately or drifts for months, every lost container eventually finds its way to the ocean floor. Here, it begins a new, slow life as an artificial reef, as marine life colonizes the steel structure. But this is not a pristine habitat. The container's paint slowly flakes off, releasing chemicals. If it breaches, its contents pour out, becoming marine debris. A cargo of plastic pellets can become a long-term pollution disaster. Other times, the contents are more benign, like a famous shipment of thousands of rubber ducks that were lost and now help oceanographers map global currents. But each lost container is ultimately a piece of man-made pollution, a permanent resident in a world it was never meant to enter.
The image of a container lost to the sea is dramatic, a powerful symbol of our ventures being reclaimed by nature. And while every loss is a financial hit and a potential environmental hazard, in the grand scheme of global trade, it is a known and accepted factor. For the hundreds of millions of containers that safely complete their journey, the few thousand that are lost are a statistical inevitability, a calculated risk in the colossal, complex, and sometimes dangerous business of connecting our world. It's a stark reminder that no matter how sophisticated our systems become, the ocean always has the final say.
If this deep dive into the risks of the sea sparked your curiosity, hit the like button to let us know. And for more explorations into the hidden mechanics of our world, make sure to subscribe to Container Curious. Now, a question for you. Have you ever wondered what it's actually like to live on one of these giant ships for months at a time? Let us know in the comments if that's a journey you'd like to take with us next.